original Doom was a real game changer for level design, allowing things like height elevations, brightness levels, and of course non-blocky wall placement. It also had some very solid design throughout its levels too. However, Doom 2's levels are a bit more varying in terms of quality. You might have one level that takes you to heaven, but then immediately after a level that sends you to hell. Taking a page from LS Mark, I'll be going through them in chronological order and ranking them, starting of course with Entryway is a pretty solid starting level. While it isn't as iconic as Hangar and it lacks that visible horseshoe design, there's enough to it to be interesting. Not only does it have a shotgun secret, but also rocket launcher and chainsaw secrets to encourage a bit of exploration while having a quick route to the exit if you just want to get it over with. Imps and former humans provide a decent warm-up without posing too much of a threat for beginners. This is in addition to being visually pleasing enough, from the stairs at the beginning to the windowsill giving you a sneak peek of outside. And of course, it even follows the John Romero principle where any visible outdoor area should be possible to go out into, and there's even a nice little river in the corner there. All in all, it is a very okay way to kick things off, even if there are ways it could be better. The Underhalls kicks things up a bit, bringing in pinkies but especially shotgun sergeants that will ruin your day if you underestimate them. Thankfully, it also introduces the Doom 2 exclusive super shotgun for you to punch back with. The cramped underground isn't a favorite, but setting off a chain reactions of barrels and exploding everything is always satisfying. Grabbing the red key and watching the chaos ensue is also a nice little shot of adrenaline. All in all, it's a short but sweet level to introduce the super shotgun and up the ante, and it has a nice underground canal theme to it. I'm placing it above Entryway. The Gauntlet. I hope you're ready to get shredded because this level introduces the Chain Gun Commando. AKA those guys that will leave you a bloody mess if you get in their line of sight for too long. Perhaps the most interesting spot of the level is a hole in the main room to try to strafe run into. If you succeed, you will be richly rewarded with blue armor, a soul sphere, a partial invisibility sphere, and an energy cell pack. Add in a choice of switches near the end with one opening a monster closet, you've got an alright level to raise the stakes a bit. And placing it below Underhalls. Next up is the Focus, best known for those shifty looking windows. Jokes aside, it's an okay level all things considered. After the previous level, it's feeling a little cramped and dark, which may very well be deliberate given the abundance of hit scanners in the beginning. Bit of a weird choice making the lift to the red key stepping on a box, but at least there's a pretty interesting trap with the yellow key in the end. Overall, it's a decent level with some moody lighting, but it is weaker than the previous two. And placing it below the Gauntlet. I'll be honest with you, the waste tunnels isn't exactly a favorite to say the least. The Soul Sphere on Hurt Me Plenty and above at the beginning almost seems like a bandage for the abundance of hit scanners right from the start. Of course, that comes to a peak in the Red Key room where, in addition to shotgun sergeants and chain gun commandos, you've got a lot of former humans to pelt on you. It's not too hard of a level despite the hit scan spam, but the dark areas aren't exactly fun to wade through. It introduces the Cacodemon Lost Soul and Hell Knight to Doom 2 though, interestingly enough. And placing it below Entryway, it's the weakest of the first 5 levels. The Crusher is where things start looking up, both quality-wise and in terms of a little difficulty. Right out of the gate, it introduces Revenants and at the start on Ultraviolence. As the name would suggest, the main gimmick of the level is a giant Crusher. Depending on your difficulty of choice, it's above 1 or 4 Hell Knights or a Spider Mastermind. Either way, you just press the switch near the lift and enjoy the crunching. The other noteworthy spot is a staircase leading up to the Red Key with a secret room with a Megasphere, rocket launcher, backpack, and blue armor if you can nail a jump. Topping it off with a horde of monsters between you and the exit, I consider it a very solid level. I'm placing it above the Focus. Dead simple is as the name implies, deadly and very simple. It serves as an introduction to the Mancubi and Arachnotrons in addition to reintroducing the mechanic from Doom 1's E1M8. Namely, when you kill all the Mancubi, walls open up revealing the Arachnotrons. Due to this, you can't really provoke infighting apart from maybe Nightmare or something else with respawning in it. You just have to take care of the Arachnotrons and the exit is yours. Simple but deadly. Obviously, the purpose of the level is to introduce these 2 Juggernaut enemies. It's very forgiving with the weapons and other pickups, making it very beatable even from a pistol start. While they probably could have made a longer level to gradually introduce them with, the level's still perfectly fine and doesn't overstay its welcome. I'm placing it above the Crusher. Tricks and Traps is very much a choose-your-own-door affair, with perils potentially behind each one. With 2 of them locked behind color keys, that leaves just 6 of them to decide your fate with. Half of them are full of enemies in exchange for a weapon, which makes it far more enticing if you're pistol starting the level. You've got a room full of imps for a shotgun, room full of cacodemons for a plasma rifle, and room full of pinkies for a rocket launcher. If you include the 2 key doors, there are 3 mandatory doors you have to get through to complete the level. The other is a room full of barons and a cyberdemon, which is introduced in Doom 2 for this level. This may seem intimidating at first, and you're actually given 2 invulnerability spheres and a soul sphere, but there's a very easy way to get through it. You just have to channel your inner Luigi and just do nothing. The cyberdemon is the only one facing you and will end up infighting with the barons upon attacking, most likely dying and taking most of them down with him. The other rooms are alright. It introduces the pain elemental and has a very cheeky teleporting monster closet, but nothing as climactic as the Cyber room. Overall, it's an amusing little level with a very gimmicky choose your fate. I'm placing it above Dead Simple. Getting into the pit, there's not really too much I can say about it. The main gimmick, as you probably guessed, is the massive pit you start out in with 4 lifts on all sides. The lowest lift has a path that will lead you up to the highest one, so thankfully you can hop down between them without ever having to return to that brown goop. There are a few interesting side paths, including one that leads to a pretty easy to find BFG, but the damaging floor areas can be a little irritating. One of them is even mandatory, since you'll be wading through radioactive waste to pull down lifts and get the yellow key. The highlight is probably the optional room of lifts, where the line to the next lift is at the back of the current one, forcing you to keep moving. Your prize at the bottom is a soul sphere, berserk pack, and blue armor to easily get 200% health and armor. Yeah, it's not too terrible. I'm placing it above the waste tunnels. Fun little fact about Refueling Base, it was originally made by Tom Hall, even though Sandy Peterson took credit for it, albeit he did spruce it up and complete it. The level itself can somewhat be described as a slaughter map, with some imps but especially former humans and shotgun sergeants all over the place. The room with the yellow key is absolutely crawling with them, so you definitely want to have a chain gun. If you pistol started or something, there's a secret early on for one at least. The level also has a few harder hitting enemies, including a cyberdemon, but in a room with cell ammo and an invulnerability sphere with an eagle's nest above with another sphere if you find the secret to it. There's an optional area with a soul sphere and a plasma rifle that can really help you too, especially dealing with the aforementioned cyberdemon. I'm placing this one below the Crusher. Call it nostalgia maybe, but I love O of Destruction. Or is it the Circle of Death? According to the intermission screen, that's what it's called, but I'm going with O of Destruction. You start out on a big fat ring with enemies all around you. A single imp on a ledge is the only one that's alerted to your presence in the beginning, so you can get your bearings before things start getting wild. A shotgun placed below a staircase assists pistol runs, after which it's a mad dash to clear out the area. If I had to describe it, it's like the start of Perfect Hatred, only 100 times more engaging because you can actually move around and take cover. The funny thing is that both maps were actually made by John Romero. The rest of the level is also very solid. It even introduces the Archvile as you progress mostly clockwise throughout the map. I'm pretty sure the music track was made for this level, even though it started out with underhauls because it's called the Healer Stalks. The only part I wasn't too thrilled about was the end, where you have to use one lift to call down another lift, but it wasn't bad in the slightest. All around, it's a very fun map to play through, and one I'll probably never get bored of. I'm placing it at the top of the list. The factory is a good enough level all around. It manages to pack a decent amount in a cramped space, with most of it being optional, so you can blaze through it if you want. You can also take your time to find everything, netting you among other things a BFG, Soul Sphere, and backpack if you didn't already have one. The final area with the cacodemons is a little annoying due to all the moving floors you have to wait for to get all the switches. While most of them do lower below the floor so you can get to their switch after you off the cacodemon, one goes right up into the ceiling. It's not exactly a deal breaker by any means, but it's something you're forced to wait around for, and I'm a modern day man. AKA a guy who has no patience and has a very, very short attention span. What was I talking about again? Oh yeah, I'm placing it below Refueling Base. Downtown isn't what I'd call an especially fun level to say the least. It does have some interesting locations, but it is ridiculously easy to get lost in. Just to prove this point, Sandy actually felt the need to throw a giant arrow in front of the building you're supposed to go in, which proves there's little visual distinction between things here. Even then, you still have to go into a very specific place within that building and then drop into a very specific area to get the mandatory blue key. Either that or you can jump down to a certain door, but then you can't actually get the blue key unless you go to where you would have dropped and then head back. Either way, it's very much a bit of a god dang it moment, and you could easily miss it and be lost for a long time. In this particular case, optional areas very much work against it. The mandatory slow-moving lift near the end wasn't especially engaging either. I'm placing it below the waste tunnels, making it the worst so far. The Inmost Dens is another more urban-styled environment like downtown, but it's also tighter and more focused. It's also pegged to the gills with hit scanners, so it can be very punishing. When I tried to get through it on Nightmare, even having an overpowered weapons pack didn't stop me from getting seriously pulverized over and over again. I'm probably starting to sound like a broken record, but the level design is again alright. The path to the Red Skull and later exit require you to hop along a path, but at least you only have to take a dip in some non-damaging water if you miss. Obviously, this water canal is the central theme of the entire level. There are also some nice architectural details like archways, but all around the level is a half-hearted shrug. I'm placing it below the pit. The industrial zone arguably does what downtown attempted to do, but so much better. It's littered with hit scan enemies, but it's spaced out enough that they aren't imminently threatening. Some chain gun sniping will get you through it A-okay. It has much more easy to read locations too, even if they're arguably more abstract in design. This isn't a matter of style versus substance either, because this just straight up looks more appealing too. Whereas downtown is more grayish and darker, the industrial zone is more vibrant and brighter. It even has a nice green castle to serve as a contrast with the grays and browns, and it's the level that grants access to the secret exit if you know where to look. I'm placing this one above the Gauntlet. Even though Wolfenstein is technically level 31, you'd chronologically get to it after the industrial zone, so I'm talking about it now. Almost all of it is Wolfenstein 3D Z1M1, only with floor and ceiling textures, brightness levels, and scaled way up weirdly. The regular troops are replaced with the Super Smurfs, basically chain gun commandos, but they fire slower, and the dogs are now pinkies. Maybe id Software should have did that with the SNES version of Wolfenstein 3D, it would have been much better than giant rats. There's not really too much to say about it, it's basically Wolfenstein 3D Z1M1 spruced up. There is also a very generous secret with a BFG, a Megasphere, a Super Shotgun, and 4 backpacks, but it feels like the level's bribing me to like it. I'm not going to confirm or deny if it worked, but I'm placing it above the factory. Gross is arguably even less remarkable since it's based after E1M8 of Wolfenstein 3D with more Super Smurfs and Hans replaced with a Cyber Demon. Notably, 4 of the pillars can be open to get a lot of goodies. There's an additional secret area in addition to the original one. Another thing to note is that the level doesn't end after you get past the Cyber Demon because there's 4 Commander Keens just hanging around for you to deal with. It's a nice Easter egg, but it's a very unremarkable level overall. At least it was fun for some nostalgia, but I think they could have done more to spruce up the levels. I'm placing this one below the factory, no matter how many bribes you throw at me. The Suburbs doesn't have too many tricks up its sleeves, but it's still a solid and very engaging level. It has some truly hard-hitting enemies in it, enough to actually get me into a death loop with corrupted cards until I regrettably no-clip just to get out of it. Be wary of the blue skull key and the teleporting monster closet you have just unleashed upon yourself. At least there's a secret area you can find that has a BFG in it, but it's up to you to figure out how to actually get to it. It has just the right amount of challenge for getting into the second half of Doom 2, and it has pretty good level design with enough incentive to explore around. I'm placing it below Dead Simple. Tenements is a very interesting one. It starts with relatively cramped spaces and then opening up once you get to the nuclear waste outside. It has a good amount of variety, not just in enemies but in what you'll be doing throughout the level. One minute you're falling down into a little nuke and hitting a switch to raise a floor, and the next you're searching for an opening into a nuclear waste pit to grab a key on the other side of an angry Arachnotron. The exit will probably be a touch confusing if you don't have sharp hearing because you go into the end of one hall and then a door opens up at the end of another one. You have to do this a good few times, even opening up a third hallway before it's over. It's another interesting level of twists and turns, another relatively fun one. I'm placing it below Industrial Zone. The courtyard isn't exactly one of my favorites. As others have pointed out, it makes the weird decision of having a shootable switch door that exists only here and nowhere else. It's at the start of the level, of course, and at least it looks like one of the usual switches, so you might be inquisitive. Keep that in the back of your head because trust me, I will be getting back to that subject later. The main area, of course, is the fight in the courtyards themselves. After that, you have to search through a room full of health bonuses to find the blue key among them and hit the switch to access the teleporter. Not a terrible level, but definitely one of the weaker in Doom 2, in my opinion. The optional areas, while okay, can't save it from relative mediocrity. I'm placing it below downtown. The Citadel, much like Doom 1's Halls of the Damned, has the mechanic where you find the 3 keys in any order to beat the level. I like this mechanic since it allows the level to be reasonably non-linear, so it's all about exploring. In Citadel's case, though, it can be a bit god-dang it at times if you don't know where you're going. 2 of the keys nearly require you to go into an area marked secret on the map to find some teleporters to place you there. One nice thing, though, is that only the red key is strictly required to beat the level. The yellow and blue bars are on opposite sides of it, and you can slip through with just one of them opened. All in all, it's a pretty good if slightly cryptic level. I'm placing it below Suburbs. Next up is Gotcha, aka the level with that arena where a cyber demon and spider mastermind duke it out. That is the most memorable part of the level by quite a margin, but that's not to say the rest of the level is terrible. The exterior is covered in a lovely coating of damaging boiling blood, but thankfully you're not really required to go through it for the most part. Maybe just very briefly near the end of the level. You can, of course, expect to find some extra goodies if you're willing to wait around in it, and there is at least one radiation suit to help you out. In particular, there's a room with a soul sphere, and if you shoot your gun in a very specific place, a BFG. That's probably the most cryptic secret in Doom 2, but it is an optional secret, so I'll let it slide. All around, it's an alright level with a fun and fighting gimmick centered around it. If you ask me, I've got all my money on Cybe. Well, crap, old Gil's not gonna be in a good place tonight. Anyway, I'm placing it above Wolfenstein. Nirvana is apparently a pretty hated one. I don't hate it myself, but it's nothing too special. For some reason, though, I got a kick out of the multi-switch rising stairs part. It also has the funny Citadel thing where in the final area leading to the exit, you don't need both keys to make it through because you can slip on through. Probably the most interesting part in the entire level is the starting area that's surrounded by medkits, probably meant as a pseudo-hub to heal yourself with. That final area with the nuclear waste pits and platforms full of enemies was also pretty neat, even if you can blow right past most of it. Nirvana is one of those levels that's merely adequate but doesn't have that much going for it, and therefore I'm placing it below the factory. The Catacombs is perhaps best known for being pretty brutally hard in the beginning. One of the 2 secrets in the starting area is full of chain gun commandos, and it only gets more hectic from there. The main platform up top is where it really piles on, with Revenants and chain gun commandos in addition to Spectres in the nuclear pit. Other than being the place to be to have your health shredded down to nothing, the level design is pretty standard. It has some okay level design, but nothing to write home about. It's a fairly compact level, but at least the underground area to get the Red Skull in is pretty interesting. I'm placing it above the courtyard. Barrels of Fun is a gimmick level. The end. Okay, so there's slightly more to it than that, but clearly the level is centered around it. The mad dash in the start is pretty fun when the Mancubus is revealed because you should know it well enough by now to know there's going to be some serious fireworks when it starts shooting. The rest of the level is pretty good with a nice big arena to fight a spider mastermind in and a smaller funneled hall with Archvile and friends. Just in case you forgot the level's core gimmick, it's covered in barrels just getting to the exit. Overall, it's a pretty fun level with a pretty fun gimmick that doesn't overstay its welcome. Getting to the Megasphere secret is also pretty gratifying to pull off. I'm placing it below Citadel. Now we get to probably the most infamous level in Doom 2, aka the Chasm. It's chock full of narrow ledges for you to navigate, which can be a bit of a bummer when Doom's all about moving fast. Now, I don't think it's the most terrible level in the history of mankind, but the criticism is at least understandable. The last area leading to the exit straight up has Lost Souls harassing you without a teleporter to save you if you happen to fall into it. It must have realized this was a bit too harsh because the Game Boy Advance version actually has a teleporter added to it. At least if you pistol start it, there's an interesting risk factor getting a shotgun and rocket launcher in the beginning. Finding the secret with a BFG is also kinda neat. Even so, it's still one of the weaker Doom 2 levels, though I'm placing it below the courtyard. Next up is Blood Falls, the level all about wading through blood. That's basically the main gimmick of the level in case you didn't know, and yes, it is boiling, so it does hurt. Other than that, the level's pretty compact, but pretty solid in its design too. Nothing that'll leave you mind blown, but nothing too bad either. The blood pool area you find the blue skull key in is probably the highlight due to the interesting design with raised platforms. Interestingly though, there's a water sealing cube above the exit that has no sidewall texture, so it just looks like it's overflowing around it. I'm not sure if that was intended or not, but it's always interesting to see glitches utilized in clever ways. Final Doom actually has a few cases of that, both visually and gameplay altering. It's a pretty inoffensive level overall. I'm placing it below Gotcha. The Abandoned Mines is another one of my personal favorites. The main attraction is a T-shaped hall with cages where you have to face down chain gun commandos and cacodemons. At least the level is nice enough to give you a super shotgun right at the start if you're pistol starting. The level is more or less themed around narrow pathways that give you visual depth at the ends of it, best seen in that rocky path mine area surrounded by a pit of lava. There's also a pretty nice Baron trap beyond the red door to catch people off guard. Add to that a pretty healthy amount of optional areas, including an area directly behind your starting position. Brave the dangers and you're rewarded with a plasma rifle. The same is true of the Mancubus area with a rocket launcher waiting for you. With a good amount of challenge befitting a later level, rewarding exploration and tight but visually interesting design, it's one of Doom 2's iconic levels if you ask me. I'm placing it above the industrial zone. The monster condo is well known for two things, being very dark and having a secret that's on a timer. You have 30 seconds before the door seals itself and its assorted bits of ammo are lost to you forever.
Let me in! Let me in!
Not a super significant secret, but I'm sure people looking for 100% will make a beeline for it. Beyond that though, there isn't anything too special here. It does have an interesting gore room leading into the exit, and the quest for the blue skull key has you uniquely going into a doppelganger of the room, but nothing too major apart from that. At least it has that trick of getting the Archvile to open the exit for you if you're looking to speedrun the level. I'm placing it above Nirvana. I'm gonna warn you right now, the spirit world is going to contain a lethal amount of salt. The level itself is mostly unremarkable, full of hellish themes as you'd expect, with a big area just full of spiders and invulnerability spheres. As a whole, it honestly feels like one of the more rushed levels, not really having any tight design to it. What truly infuriates me, however, is this spot right here. You may be wondering why I'm calling attention to this inconsequential symbol on the wall, one you'd probably normally blow right on by. Well, I'll tell you why, this symbol is shootable. That may sound like the random shoot spot in Gotcha with how obscure it is, but unlike that, this isn't to get some obscure secret. This is actually mandatory to reach the level's exit. I wish I was kidding, but I am not. If you want to beat this level, you have to shoot this random wall detail that doesn't look anything like a proper switch. It's the courtyard only 100 times worse because it's far enough in that you're looking all over the place on top of that. Yes, I am petty enough to condemn an entire level for one exceptionally obscure solution, especially when the rest of the level is the equivalent of white noise in my opinion. It's getting placed dead last, or spoilers, it will remain for the rest of this video and for all eternity. Much like the episodes of Doom 1, the last level of Doom 2 is devoted to the final boss. That makes this the final proper level, fittingly titled The Living End. You can tell it's a John Romero level because the level's exit is visible to you when you make your way out of the starting area. That's good old horseshoe design. There's the goal in mind and you'll have to head towards it. The level's theme can be described as ascension, or maybe that's just the aggressively steep staircase. The actual path is somewhat cramped, but a pool of damaging blood makes it feel like one of the more open areas in Doom. It doesn't just look big either, it's a bit of a marathon level with what almost feels like miniature levels condensed into the big hole. It even ends with a cyber demon, though you could easily make it to the level's exit before he reaches you if you just want to get it over with. Don't worry, I won't judge you, you spineless little anyway. It's a nice beefy level with enough twists and turns to be an excellent coup de grace to the game's regular non-boss devoted levels. I'm placing it above Tricks and Traps. Finally, we come to the penultimate level, the Icon of Sin. The final boss is basically a giant skull on a wall spitting monster spawning cubes at you. While that's a pretty cool concept, the level itself boils down to just going up lifts to a switch, hitting a switch, and then hitching a lift to fire rockets into its brain. I'll admit having an enemy with a weak spot is pretty cool, even if the engine necessitated making it an immobile wall. The John Romero cameo is also pretty cool, but otherwise the level design isn't that exciting. It relies on randomly spawning enemies to do the brunt of the challenge, and as a penultimate level, it just isn't as interesting as the OG Doom's E1M8 or E4M8 that came after. Still, it can be pretty hard-thumping. I'm placing it above Bloodfalls. And that is it for my ranking of all Doom 2 levels. I really hope you enjoyed watching. Truthfully, few of the Doom 2 levels actually irritate me, but they do range from iconic to aggressively mediocre for the most part. As a whole, even if Doom 2's level design isn't quite as sharp as Doom 1's, it's still very nostalgic and enjoyable. Let me know if you'd like to see me use this format again in the future. I would be more than happy to rank more game levels like Doom 1, the 2 parts of Final Doom, etc. Maybe even non-Doom levels if I can extract them into Blender. Anyway, subscribe and hit the bell icon to get your next fix, and a like always helps too. Capitalize on life and have a nice and pleasant day.